Hi everyone, this is Yelena from Amazonia PPC, and today with me I have a very special guest. Elizabeth Greene from Junglr is here to talk to you about product targeting strategies and some methods that she uses in her everyday work. Elizabeth, thank you for being here with me today and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm really excited to do this. This is actually my first time doing one of these things. So
I
I'm
noticed,
excited. This will be a lot of fun.
me too. I noticed that you were very active on Facebook groups, especially for PPC consultants, which is where I was drawn by some of your posts. And I wanted to pick your brain around product targeting, and maybe we can share some value to our community around that. So,
hmm
can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you started, about your agency, and what the services that you provide?
Yeah, so our agency's name is Junglr. We've honestly, as far as like really getting into the business and starting like, okay, this is 100% we're relatively new to the game. We've been around Amazon for a while. Actually, it's my husband and I are the ones who co-founded it. So a little while ago, we've seen a huge need and been working with some sellers. Um, and there's a lot of people who just don't have time for PPC, or maybe, I mean, it's a whole animal in itself, as I'm sure you know. And it's really something that you can really get down into and learn every single nut and bolt. And the more we learn, there's always new testing and things to do. So we decided to just go full force on that and really provide value to clients. And so we offer a full service Amazon PPC management. So we also handle AMS. We do all the EU markets as well, and handling like sponsored brands. And there's quite a few more that goes into it other than just sponsored products. But so we offer all of those services to the clients.
Interesting. So, out of all the campaigns that you manage, specifically, our focus today is going to be product targeting. So,
Mhm.
can you tell us, like, generally speaking, what's your experience with product targeting ever since you started it, and versus all the other targeting types, what the results are when they're compared to the
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's a lot like keyword targeting in my experience, as far as you'll see better conversions the more targeted you are with, with the other listings that you're targeting. So I've you want to look on Amazon and see how the product appears, look at the reviews relative to yourself as well as the price point relative to yourself, because when the customers are seeing your listing, like it's displayed at the bottom of the screen, a lot of times you may have a more premium product, but unless your first image really displays that or your reviews really display that, the customer is not going to be able to see your additional images or your branding content when they're just seeing the first image. So you want to make sure that you have a listing that really can stand out or will stand out against whoever that it is that you're targeting. So we found a much better results if we get more specific with which listings it is we're targeting and really analyzing how our product stacks up against that one.
Mhm. So that being said, you consider, like, for example, ASIN level targeting to be more efficient compared to category level targeting.
Yeah, it's definitely more efficient. You tend to have much better results. There's a lot of people who the autos definitely target other listings as well,
Mhm.
and those you may find ones that can convert. So that's another thing. A lot of people will put up an auto and then scrape any
Yeah.
converting keywords and then retarget those in a manual. You can also do that with ASINs, and that's a great way. If you're not really sure which products to target, and you never dealt with product targeting before, you can just go with what's working and retarget, just kind of ease into it that way. And that's a good way to do it. But a lot of sellers, and that's a big thing on the groups, is how do I negative target ASINs in an auto, because I have all these ASINs popping up and they're
Yes.
not converting. That happens a bit with the category targeting if you are not refining it. So in a lot of ways, Amazon will just blast you out there, but oftentimes they'll blast you to things that are not relevant. They don't really convert. There's sometimes you're like, why am I on this listing? It doesn't even make any sense. So it's definitely, it's again a lot like keywords. The more targeted, the more relevant you are, oftentimes the better those metrics will be, the the cost per clicks or the conversion rate, which translates into better ACoS. So
I agree. That's exactly our approach as well. So when we have like an entirely new account, we start by running automated campaigns just to figure out which kind of approach, whether keyword targeting or product targeting is going to work for this account, unless we don't have like a general idea coming from a client telling us what should we focus on. But like, for example, if you let an automated campaign run and you see a lot of ASINs in the list in your search terms report, then that might be a good indication that product targeting would be the logical next step, especially with those ASINs that you already have the data for. So it's definitely a great tip for someone to test. So when do you use category targeting? And going back to category targeting, are there any cases in which you would like to test it out and see what kind of conclusions can you draw from a campaign that's using category targeting?
Yeah, so we have used category targeting most times when we have a seller who's looking to get a very aggressive launch. A lot of times people will use, say, sponsored brands, and they say, oh, we're creating brand awareness. Category targeting will just blast you out there, but it will blast you to, say, a subsection. So you have a tiny bit more control possibly than an auto. And you can also, you might have a couple subcategories that your product can fit into, and you can target, say, both of those. So you can get yourself cast a really wide net. However, without any control over where your product is showing up, a lot of times you may show up under a top competitor who has a much better price, and they might have a little bit higher review count, and you're just not going to convert as well on those products, unfortunately. But it is something we use when we're looking to just, we want to go hard and fast, and we just want to, they are good to, say, gather the data. So if you put like a decently high bid and you just blast it out there, you can come back with what works, and then keep refining that, or perhaps take those and then stick them in a more targeted ASIN category or ASIN campaign. So that is a technique. If we just need to pay for the data, we want to get out there, we're just we want to go full force, that is something that can be done, and you can at least scrape a lot of those ASINs quicker, but you're going to have to pay for that. So if you're okay with doing that, and that's something that you want to do, that's fine. But just realize what comes along with that. Another thing we will do is, if we would just want to garner some more ASINs, we're not worried so much about doing it hard and fast. What we can do is you can set parameters on the category targeting. You can refine by review count, and you can also refine by price point. Depending on where your price point is sitting and where your star rating is sitting, oftentimes it will severely restrict how many ASINs you show up under. So even when you're creating the campaign and you put those refinements on there, it'll say, if you put these refinements, your impressions are not going to be that high, especially if you're at the higher end of the pricing scale in your category. The number of products that are perhaps above your price point is going to be much less. However, if you're not worried so much about just getting a lot of eyes on your product, you want eyes that are going to convert, those tend to do pretty well. And it also depends on how many products are in your category. So if you have a lot of products in that category, you will have many more ASINs for Amazon to choose from to show you up under, versus if it's a very small category, there's not as much competition. There's less of those, especially if you start really refining it. So that's something to take into consideration. That technique does work better, or I should say, you have much more for Amazon to choose from if you're in a very high competition niche. So that's just something to note.
Yeah. Well, when we look back at the last 6 months, all the features that Amazon recently rolled out, majority of them oriented towards competitive strategies, competitive targeting. Well, basically, probably because they have limited amount of placements and the competition is becoming more and more fierce. So we have to develop those strategies to fight it, to fight the competition. All starts, of course, with a good product, good quality product, and a good offer in general, so that customers can choose us. When it comes to category targeting, we've also seen that it works really well, but it's also expensive. It works really well in terms of that aggressive approach to entering a new market. Category targeting works really well when you have a product that isn't, entirely covered through keyword targeting. Meaning, if it's a new product market that customers don't know it exists yet, and it becomes like a blend of two different products, that this is like a third version of something of two things that already existed. Those are the cases where we see it's pretty effective, and the category targeting works even better than automated campaigns for some reason. So as long as you have that kind of tolerance towards the cost it generates, then it might work. When it comes to product exclusions, that's something you mentioned. How do we negate something that when you have an ASIN that's unprofitable in your search terms reports? Do you have any specific approach, any advice for people who want to exclude those ASINs, make sure that they don't show up anymore?
You mean from the autos?
Yes.
Unfortunately, there's really no direct way to do that. Amazon gave it to us for a second and then they took it away. I wish there was something we could do, because that would solve a lot of problems. The best way, so ASINs typically are pulled through complements and, let's see, it's close match, loose match, complements, and substitutes. So they're pulled through the complements and the substitutes. So you can lower those, those bids. If you click into your autos, and then if you click on targeting, you'll see those four. Amazon has given us a little more control over autos now. That we can set individual bids for the specific targeting types. So if you lower those bids until you're profitable on the complements and substitutes, then you can at least bring down what you're bidding on those ASINs. You'll bring down everything as a whole. So there is that. There is a technique out there that people have tried, possibly going to searching that ASIN on Amazon, and you can go to the listing and perhaps say the brand name or anything that is any words that are very specific to that ASIN. People have negative phrase match that inside of the autos. I don't really prefer that technique so much. First off, you're clearing quite a bit. It doesn't always work 100%. And so there's some speculation as to whether, how Amazon is pulling those ASINs, if they're looking at, the wording in the listing, or how exactly they choose what to show you under. Some people have reported that works. Some people said it doesn't work at all. And then you are potentially clearing a lot of stuff, and you want to be super careful with which keywords you're pulling from that listing to negative phrase match, because you can clear a bunch of stuff and you just end up getting rid of a bunch of sales. So autos are great, and they definitely give you a lot of placements. You can, we always keep autos running. Oftentimes we might even keep a couple autos running for a specific product, but you want to make sure you're adjusting those autos towards profitability, because you want to start getting more and more targeted with your manuals as you learn what works, and you can spend your money there. So I would just keep adjusting those bids, those targeting bids, until you can get that targeting type profitable. That's how I would approach that.
Yeah, it's a little different approach, but what you just mentioned, like negating the brand name, was something that we also do, but only in cases when it really repeats a couple of times, when you see that a certain brand is giving you bad sales in terms of very expensive sales, or no sales at all, just generating cost, then usually you can see like a pattern within the last
Yeah.
30 days that a certain brand just stands out. That's the case when we exclude it. Otherwise, if it's not really causing a lot of damage, we just approach with the bid adjustment. That's like a good
Yeah.
combination of two things.
Mhm. Mhm.
Do you ever target your own products through product targeting?
Yes. Yes. So there's a couple things you can do with that. You can, depending on how competitive your niche is and how you want to approach it, especially if you have, say, a product that has variations, you might just stick another one of those variations down there, just to try and, because your competitors are going to show up there. You have competition showing up there, you might as well be showing up there. And yes, you'll pay for that click, but they would have clicked off on a competitor. So at least they're being redirected to your product. So that's a technique. Another thing you can do is cross-sell products. So perhaps you have one product that's very complementary to another. A lot of times if you're rebuilding a brand, you have a whole suite of products that are very complementary to each other. You can actually target your own ASINs with that, especially products that are often bought together. That would be a good one to target. I mean, you could, if you wanted to go crazy with it and say, I don't want anyone to show up under my listing, I want to own this space. You could do very high bids, say even target the variations plus the complementary product, and really just try and push out competition there. It depends if you're willing to pay for those clicks, but that's definitely something that's not a bad idea if you just want to own your listing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also what we do. We try to protect the listings from the competition as much as possible, because you have a couple of layers of competitors' products below on your own product detailed page, which is sometimes very annoying and
Yes.
kills off conversion rates. That's one of the conversion rates hacks that we also advise advertisers to do, is to target their own products, especially if you have like a complementary portfolio where something would be a good upsell where a product would be a good upsell for another product. So when you choose products to target on an ASIN level targeting, do you have any methods? How do you, the favorite approaches to how do you choose which ASINs to target?
It depends on what I'm looking to do with that specific product. So say I have a client that says, okay, I want to get out there. We're going to be aggressive. We're willing to spend. Well, I will be much more lenient with the products that I'm looking to target versus a client that says, I'm really worried about ACoS. I'm worried about profitability. I want to get out there, but I want to be, I'm not willing to spend so much. I'll be much more judicious with the ASINs that I'm looking to target. And actually, what I do, I find super helpful is when I'm doing keyword research for my product, any keyword research, I always look at the front page. I use multiple keyword research tools, but there's really no substitute for seeing what the buyers see when they're looking at your product. So that's one thing I look for. I might type in a keyword, always use an incognito window when possible. If you're just, say you're clicking the link off of Helium 10, it's a lot easier, just to click it and see what happens. But main keywords, I always search in an incognito window. And one thing I'm looking for when I'm looking at the competition is, okay, so what are their price points? What are the star ratings for this? How does the listing show up? And if I see any ASINs that I'm like, okay, it makes sense, I fit here. If I see anything, I always keep a notepad open and I'll click over and I'll create, like, say, subsections. So, okay, this one has, I might say, like, better, our listing's better on this one. Well, okay, so the price point's the same. Okay, maybe the price point's a little higher, but our star rating. And because when you put ASINs inside of a category targeting campaign, it will just show up as an ASIN. You don't get to see what that ASIN actually is. Amazon just updated their search term tab, which is really awesome. You can see what the products look like. So that's very helpful, but that only shows you what got clicked on. It doesn't show you anything that's maybe not getting any impressions. So I might say, okay, well, I'm not getting impressions on this ASIN, but is it worth it for me to bump up this bid to try and get impressions? How relevant am I really? Am I targeting? If you just, say you just scrape a bunch of ASINs and you throw them in a campaign, well, maybe you targeted complementary products. Those are harder to get impressions for. That's a really good technique to do. So not only using your own complementary products on your own listings, but going out and seeing, I'm selling bath salts. Maybe, so maybe it's bath salts that are really good for like foot scrubs or something like that. Well, I might go and target foot baths because somebody who's looking for like a foot spa probably is going to buy my product. So it makes sense to cross-reference those, but those are much harder to get Amazon to say, okay, you're relevant for this, because they're just looking at the keywords and going, it's kind of relevant, but it's not. So sometimes you need to really push those bids to get any eyes on the product and get eyes on that placement. But if I'm looking through and I just see everything thrown in a single campaign, okay, so this one doesn't have any impressions. Is that because it's a complementary product that I really need to push, or is that because there might be some other reason there, or maybe I just accidentally scraped another ASIN that doesn't make any sense and I just want to pause it? Well, I'm going to have to click on that, go search on Amazon, see what the product is. There's really no way for me to see that. Versus if I segment everything into categories, like say, so I'll have a separate campaign, or you could even do ad groups. We do campaigns, but for complementary products versus, ones that I really, really want to target. These are ones that I have a much better offer on. So I'm willing to pay much more for these because ideally the conversion should be better versus ones, or another technique you can do. It's expensive, but if you really want, you say there's a keyword that I really want to go after. I 100% like, this is my main keyword. I'm willing to pay for it. One thing you can do is to go search that keyword on Amazon, incognito window again, because you don't want any skewed data in there. And you can scrape all of the ASINs from the first page, and then you can throw those in a campaign. That it can get expensive because there's obviously going to be a lot of ASINs or a lot of listings there that may have a better price point. They may have a better star rating. So, you're going to pay more for those, but you're going to show up on everybody's page for somebody who's clicking it. I mean, you could even do the second page. But those I would also want to segment into their own campaign, because I realize these are something I'm going after, but it's going to be, I'm going to spend more for this, but because I have those ASINs segmented into their own group, I know I'm willing, I'm much more tolerant of, say, what the bids are, what the budget is, what the ACOS is in this, versus if I just threw it all together, well, then, I might be adjusting bids and I wouldn't really be able to really understand what it is that I'm looking at.
Okay, is that structured like one product per campaign, or you put them all together in one campaign?
You mean as far as the ASINs that you yourself are advertising, you mean?
Yes, like for example, when you have like a product that you really, really want to go after, you really want to show up on their product detail page, would you recommend separating them in their own campaign so that you have more control over how much budget you allocate to them?
Yeah, so I like segmenting everything. I personally have been building out using, and this is across pretty much everything, one campaign, one ad group. There's nothing wrong with ad groups. Ad groups are fine. I got turned on to it by another really good management. I'm sure you've heard of her, Destiny. But the reason for that is because when I go into the account, I can see everything top level. So if you have multiple ad groups, and you have to click down into the campaign, okay, so which ad group, right? And because of the sheer volume that I'm managing, it makes my life much simpler. And then the other reason is I can set specific campaign budgets, and if later on I want to go in or do percentage adjustments or certain, you know, bidding strategy, I know that that's only going to affect whatever keywords I've put in there versus, you know, just having one. I've seen it where you have one campaign with multiple ad groups, and that gets tricky to scale from my experience. So
Okay,
I find it
so
much easier to segment.
for management purposes, you would recommend this structure: one campaign, one ad group only in it. But when it comes to targeting options, would you recommend just targeting one ASIN in that one campaign, or
So
you would
single
not?
ASIN, single campaign. That's
Yeah.
something you could do. Your the impressions and the sales volume would not be as high typically ASIN targeting, because the way they are in their placements, they don't have as high of an impressions. Some categories you'll end up with quite a few sales from ASIN targeting. Sometimes the sales volume oftentimes is going to be a bit lower just due to the nature of the targeting. So what I have done, you might have a product that's very well ranked, but they might have like a million different variations. What I have done is I've gone in there and I've scraped the ASINs for every single one of their variations, and I'm like, I want to show up everywhere. You know,
Right.
anytime a customer clicks on any of the different variations, every time they're browsing this, I want to show up. And, you know, so then they say, hey, this thing you know, they're more likely to click on my product. The impressions, you know, aren't going to be that high for that, especially, you know, some variations people just don't really click on. But that is something I've done, and me segmenting that into its own campaign just gives me, for me as a back end management perspective,
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to see exactly what that is, and I know this is something I'm going after, and I'm able to quickly just identify that and say, okay, how is this going? Am I even getting impressions on this thing? Does anyone even think I'm relevant, you know, to this product? So from just a structure, you know, a management perspective, to me that makes sense structurally. You know, you could give it its own ad group, or you could just throw it all in together. I don't really think that makes much of a difference, but it does help you identify things much quicker. It saves a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I just wanted also to add a quick tip. Like, for example, when you're just specifically chasing for that one competitor's ASIN that you're after, sometimes it will make sense to advertise just your cheapest variant, or the ones that's best selling. That's like the strongest variant, because that's how you
yes.
create the biggest window for new customers to get familiarized with your brand, which is something that makes a lot
Yes.
of sense when you're going after specific brands. So talking about going after specific brands, in which cases would you advise using brand targeting or maybe age range targeting options?
You mean for the the category with the branding targeting?
Yes, like when you have an option
Yeah.
to filter out
hmm
just specific brands. Have you tested it out? Did it work for you?
I've mostly gone after ASINs. To be honest, I haven't tested that as much just because some of the brands are pretty broad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, brands that offer quite a few products. To be honest, I haven't done that as much. I have targeted a brand in a way, but being much more specific, like I shared before, with like going in and targeting every single variation, and then they might have or quite a few products in that specific brand. I would go and pull out whatever ASINs are relevant to the product and, you know, put those in their own campaigns to kind of
Mm-hmm.
segment and target them there. To be honest, I haven't played with brand targeting as much. To me, it's a bit more of a shock on blast. So with category targeting, I can have some refinements. Brand targeting, I suppose you can as well, but I guess you would get a little more. I guess the short answer is no. I haven't I haven't tested it as much, but yeah.
We have tested it. It's not very, like you're right about some brands having a very wide product portfolio, so you can't really
Yeah.
diversify which products are relevant for product targeting and which aren't, which is one of the main downsides of brand targeting. But when it comes to age range, ranges, that's something that can come in handy, especially if you know who your audience is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the only,
Yeah.
in my opinion, the only currently available audience targeting feature that we currently have. I think that they will roll it out
Yeah.
sometime in the future, but if you know specifically that your product is targeting baby boomers, then you can just filter out the rest of the people out of the targeting just to make it more effective. But still, you need to spend some money to test things and really figure out what works and what doesn't. So it all comes down to that.
Yeah, I suppose delving into brain analytics, you would get some of those metrics as far as the audience you're looking to target or age range.
You also mentioned upselling your own products with product targeting. So what are the ways in which someone can really ensure that, can you give us like a couple of examples where it's worked really well for you, for your brand?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, mostly we've seen the best upselling when, so you might have a a product that goes very well with another one, but may not necessarily be something that somebody needs to purchase with the other product. I'm trying to think of an example that's not exactly what it is that we're dealing with. Okay, so maybe like weights, like say you're selling like hand weights with ankle weights. Okay, well technically those are complementary, but somebody who's looking for, just the typical one that, they might be using with their hand may or may not want something for their ankles. They might say, oh yeah, I forgot, I can do this other exercise with this. Or perhaps hand weights with the resistance bands. Yes, they're complementary. Yes, it's possible to get conversions, but it might not actually be something that the customer or the buyer may or may not be looking to purchase those two items together. Not a bad idea to do that. However, like I said, the numbers may or may not be there. One thing that would be very complementary, I'm trying to think. So if you are selling like backdrops,
Mm-hmm.
but you had like those backdrop or like photo props, those are very complimentary. Most likely somebody who's looking for a photo, especially if it's for an event, is definitely looking for something, oftentimes to go along with that photo, because those are very popular. So you would tend to see much better upsells on that type of product, something that the buyer is definitely looking to purchase with, that item. We tend to see better numbers on those.
That's definitely a great tip. We also look at the frequently bought together section. If there's any clues there as to what Amazon is, suggesting that customers are buying together, they obviously have the data and they're sharing it with us.
Yeah.
But at the same time, also look at for clients who have their own e-commerce websites, just historically the customers, what they're buying together might be a good clue what to put together in product targeting on Amazon as well, because if you don't have like already a general idea what works best together. So that's a good idea for like an upsell. When it comes to using sponsor brands campaigns with product targeting with sponsor brands campaigns, can you share some ideas, what has worked for you and your experience coming from that?
Yeah, so we've used those, and to be honest, I'm not 100% sure where they show up. I've looked into it, kind of tried to research. It's very interesting because you have the option to put a headline. However, from what I've seen, or at least the ones that I've run, and try and look at those ASINs and see where it's showing up, it looks like they might be showing up under that, what is it, 4 stars or above, but those are the sponsored. I've seen ours show up there, which doesn't include the headline you've specified. So that's a little strange. I know, yeah, the impressions tend to be, relatively low for those, just due to placements. And I think, the placement options are just less. Like with the ASIN targeting, you have several carousels at the bottom of the listings now. But it's a good just additional, like if you're really trying to go hard after a certain ASIN or perhaps, a certain group of ASINs, it's just another one to throw up there just to get, just get every single placement possible.
Yeah, well, typically with sponsor brands, you get those premium placements. That's something that one of the main advantages of these campaign types. Have you compared the performance of sponsor brands versus sponsor products for product targeting?
I have not. I need to. I did quite a few recently, and I'm waiting for, to really be able to look at the numbers, because right now I think they're a bit too new for me to really do a cross comparison.
Well, I've found some interesting conclusions when we did test out the comparison between the two, and really works well for accounts where you want to take away market share from competitors, and then you have some very specific ASINs that you want to target, and you do that through sponsor brands campaigns. They generate usually a good amount of new to brand sales, which comes really relevant for brands that have loyal customers that have repeated purchases over time, that people, when they come back and purchase again organically, even without PPC. So using sponsor brands campaigns generally is a very good campaign type for new to brand sales. So that's also like a twist to product targeting as well, like implementing that competitive strategy, but with the branding elements that also sponsor brands gives. But like you said, like you mentioned, like we don't really know for sure any time where they're showing up and how exactly are they being triggered. Like if you use ASIN targeting, does it mean that your sponsor brands ads are going to show up in the search results page, on the product detail pages? What are the specific placements? That's something that we don't know.
Yeah, the only one I've seen for sure that's shown up is that that product, it's above 4 stars products, and that is the first carousel. So I did see one that I was using ASIN targeting. I saw that show up there, which I don't remember if I've been able to get that placement before with ASIN targeting. I couldn't say one way or the other. I'm trying to remember. Because I've seen that placement before, and that one is premium. And it's, if you're above 4 stars, it looks good. It does say, they have that little grayed out that says sponsored, but most times, buyers don't know one way. We see it. We see everything, and we notice all the little, okay, this is sponsored, this is sponsored. How do I get there? But most buyers, they just see the page. They're not looking for that. So I did see one of mine show up there. I keep looking at, where am I showing? I have seen that, what is it? It's sponsored display, but through AMS, where you can put, the little thing. I've seen that pop up once or twice through an ASIN targeting, on a listing, but that's not a guarantee. And then I was like, oh great, we have this placement, and then it went away like the very next refresh. So that's something I've seen with ASIN targeting, but it's not controlled unless you have access to AMS. There's no guaranteed way to get that placement, unfortunately.
Well, that's how it works right now, but I'm hoping that they will transfer a lot of things to Seller Central so that it becomes accessible to more people. Okay, Elizabeth, do you have any tips or any specific, case studies, maybe examples that you would like to share additionally with our audience?
Trying to think. Case studies as in just in general, or
yes, not necessarily for product targeting. Like number one tip, if someone asks you what's the one thing that they should not, the one mistake that they should not make with their Amazon advertising, what would it be?
My main thing is relevancy. When you are, I'm handling a lot of product launches right here. I'm kind of in a weird spot where I've got a lot of things churning really good, and then I'm also doing launches, so I have less of the in between, still navigating. So with the launches, been doing a lot of keyword research, looking, okay, where does this product fit? Amazon PPC, it's a lot simpler than, say, a Facebook ad because you have less creatives. But that doesn't mean that buyer psychology doesn't come into play. So I am a big believer, preach a lot on looking at the front page and what the shopper sees when they're looking at that specific keyword. So really trying to get into the head of buyers on, does my product fit on this page? And if it does, where would it fit? And then also recognizing the more varied the products are on that page, it doesn't mean it's not a place that you can't show up, but your conversion rate typically is going to be much lower than if you have a page that really makes sense for your product. So in the beginning, as far as keywords that I would target aggressively, I would look for the most relevant keywords to the product is something I definitely focus on. When I first get a new product, client sends me this, okay, we're going to launch this. My first objective is to say, what is the most high volume relevant keyword? That's where I start. And once I figure out that, I build out around that. So for me, it's okay, let's do a couple of reverse ASINs. Let's look at the main keywords. Okay, what's in competitors listing? Let's throw that into a keyword tool, look at search volume. Search volume isn't everything. None of the keyword tools, the numbers are not exact, but you can get it relevant to the other keywords you're looking at. So I want to do as much as I can, search by search volume, look at a couple lists, and then go down that list and say, what is most relevant to my product? And I look in that page. Sometimes that keyword is going to be a much lower search volume than you might want to look into. Sometimes a lot of people are worried about search volumes. So if you're saying cutting board, say you're selling a wood cutting board, and obviously cutting board, that's the highest, so okay, I want to be on cutting board because look how many sales I can make. There's plastic cutting boards, there's wood cutting boards, there's ones with accessories, there's ones without it. I mean, that is so varied. And oftentimes for cutting board, the people who are up there at the top, most times you look at the price point is like, how do you make money selling that? But they're up at the top. You can't compete with that. So if it was a bamboo wood cutting board, that might be your highest relevant main keyword, the highest volume with the most relevancy.
Right.
That's something I would find that, and I would say, okay, let's look at the ecosystem around this, and then let's start, where do I fit? This is my market. This is the buyers that are looking for my product. I want to get in front of the buyer that wants to buy mine, not, oh, I want a cutting board. No, I want, this is what I want. Let's show it to those buyers. And most times your numbers will be much better for those than if you just, you try to blast it out there.
I agree. I've seen it so many times in accounts that it's a very common mistake. Elizabeth, thank you for being a guest on our show today. And if anyone wants to reach Elizabeth for any advice or a consultation, I will share a link to their website and a video description. And I hope you had a lot of value from this video, and we'll make sure to post it as soon as we can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it.
Me too. Okay, bye-bye.